Welcome to JTV, I'm Molly Annisfeld. We're currently filming during the 3 weeks, which is a time in the Jewish calendar where we become more sensitized to the more dark and painful moments in Jewish history. We're here at an exhibit which has been transported from America to London. It's called the Born to Live exhibit, created by the Ahmed Aish Memorial Museum. And the focus of this exhibit, which we're going to have a tour around, is about the experience, particularly for children during the Holocaust, the victim experience. The Holocaust was, of course, something that wiped out 6 million Jews, but 1.1 million of those were children. And Hitler was particularly focused on killing children because they were the future generation of the Jewish people. They represented Jewish continuity, something he was trying to put a stop to. So we're going to look around this exhibit with a tour guide, Mrs. Adina Abakasis, and there's going to be some really interesting exhibits and pieces of information that perhaps you've never heard before. Enjoy. Okay, Adina, thank you very much for offering us your time to show us around this, what looks like a really fascinating museum. Can you take us to the first exhibit?
For sure. This is an exhibit on the children of the Holocaust, hidden children during the Holocaust, and it is about the hidden children's aspect of being in the Holocaust. It's looked at through the eyes of the child. Yet it is an exhibit also for adults to see, but if we look at how the children, the dilemmas that they faced as children in the Holocaust, which is a different story than that of adults. So if we see here, we can see here a lovely picture of two young children who were put in hiding in a Christian family. And what we understand about the children is they were 1.1 million children killed in the Holocaust, okay? 6 million in total people, but 1.1 million were actually children. And the reason that they were...
Are you defining them as under the age of...
Under the age of, well, when we get, I think, to Auschwitz, we can discuss that, but the idea was anybody that was under the age of maybe like 12, 13, they were considered to be the enemies, the arch enemies of the Reich. And this was the biggest problem. So as we can see here, why were they enemy of the Reich? Well, the reason would be is because, number one, they would bring next generation into fruition, and also they would be the ones to stand up and talk after. If they survived, they would be the ones to give testimony, which they had to get rid of them so the testimonies could not be said.
Wow.
Thank God they were not successful. What we're going to look through here in the exhibit is different types of hiding that children went through. So we have the children started in hiding that they had to leave their homes, children in hiding that had to be put with families, hidden whether with a Christian family or in an orphanage. We'll also look at the story of children who went on the kinder transport. And we will also discuss children later after what happened when they did survive, what happened to them afterwards when they were later found. And we have a lot of information here about a man named Mike Tress who helped the Agudat Yisrael in establishing, putting these children in homes later on. So what we're going to do is go through the exhibit, we'll give you a 3 or 4 minute description and discuss the artifacts along with the story behold.
Excellent.
So if we start here with the first station here, we have a couple items here. First, we have a suitcase. We have to remember, we ask ourselves, when you're told you have 10 kilos, pack, what would you pack? And what does a child think of packing? His teddy bear, his favorite blankie, but they don't know where they're going, they have no idea, so they took things with them. Unfortunately, we know what happened when we see pictures of the Holocaust, and we see the pictures in Auschwitz of all the suitcases left behind. But this would be the size of suitcase that a child would take and put their whole life into it. As a child would have to think, what is going through a child's mind when they put your whole...
This is at which point? They're about to be deported to a camp?
Or they could be deported, or their parents telling them, we're going to flee, we're leaving, or we're putting you with a family, we're going to put you into hiding, okay?
Right.
Here we have a Tehillim.
So 1 second, so this is an actual suitcase?
This is an actual suitcase, correct.
Of a child?
And this was a child's suitcase, yes. And here we have just a siddur that has the blessing the parents say on Friday nights to their children as the Sabbath comes in. We always bless our children. They should have, they should be blessed and they should be safe and that God should watch over them. And here's the siddur the child took in his suitcase with him on his way out the door.
This is a photo of this?
That's correct. So what we have is a lot of the, some of the artifacts, unfortunately, that they have in the museum in America, because this is an exhibition brought over from the museum in America, the Ahmed Aish Memorial Museum in America. Some things, artifacts cannot travel.
Understand.
So we've had to source, so this, for example, has been sourced here, and other things we've represented, we made replicates of them in pictures so you can see what it was. Here we have also a tallis bag by a boy named Moshe Lerner, who we'll talk about later on in the exhibit.
So just explain again what that is.
I'm sorry, a tallis bag is that we put a prayer shawl on us, and the prayer shawl goes inside the bag, and this, you can see his initials here. Okay, Moshe Shmulevitz, sorry, not Moshe Lerner, this is Moshe Shmulevitz, and he is takes this with him on the kinder transport that we'll be talking about in another station.
So what did you, so we found, you're saying that you found that the kind of things people packed were spiritually related.
Yeah, well, you think about it. If you ask a child today, what would you pack? Well, they would say my iPhone. And they would say in the old days, my Game Boy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe my iPad.
Yeah.
But these kids were told pack, or the parents packed for them, but they didn't know even where the kids were going.
Yeah.
And when you think, today, what's 10 kilos? That's what you get on EasyJet. So if we're thinking about that, what can you fit? How much of a life can you fit into a suitcase? So we go on to the next bit of this, which is the idea of the shoe. The shoe represents a lot, okay? When we think of the Holocaust and you see a shoe like that, first of all, you think of all the souls that were lost. This shoe happened to belong to this child here. His name was David Ettlinger. He, fortunately, with his family, escaped on time. This is a shoe that was a hand-me-down shoe from family to family that when he finally was able to leave Germany on time and they fled through Amsterdam and they got finally to America, as it says here on the banner, they were able to make it. And this is just the shoe representing childhood. Shoes are very important. What do you do without your shoes? It's a very interesting question, was raised once to me by Yad Vashem, actually. They said, they interviewed 100 survivors, and they asked them all the same question. What did you do the first week of liberation? So the first one, everybody said the same thing. Everybody they asked said the same thing. The first day, they just walked. They didn't even get out of the bed. Second day, they walked around the barracks. By the third day, they got up and they walked outside. And what do you assume they would look for? What would you assume? What would you assume? You've been in a camp for...
Their relatives.
I thought food, water. They were starting, right?
Fine.
They said no. They actually went to look for shoes and socks.
Wow.
Because a shoe represents the difference between a human and an animal. And we have to cover our feet in order to pray. And we also have to cover our feet to feel human. So the shoe is a big representation of the Holocaust. Here we have a shoe of a child, Hinda Cohen, who you can see etched on here the day of deportation of the shoe. Unfortunately, they only found one shoe. This was from the deportation site.
Who etched that onto the shoe?
The family. They found her. She was deported, the girl, and they found only one shoe.
Right.
And that shoe is what they kept her as a memorial, and they have now etched the date of her deportation on the shoe, and that's what they have.
She was killed.
She was killed in Auschwitz. Okay, and as we're talking about children, which is what the whole exhibit is about, here we have another child. So here we have a story of a child who lost her life. Here's a story of a child's shoe who they did finally make it to America.
Right.
And here we have a story. This is an artifact sourced here in London. The family is Cohen. Yeah. The family today, the grandmother was Cohen. The family today is LeBlanc. And this was a dress that this little girl, Miriam, wore. This is her 18 months old.
Wow.
She was 18 months old when she wore this dress. And we have a picture of her in the dress that was painted by the family. And they've even put in here, Anki. They changed her name to Anki, my little maidel, my little child, my little darling.
Wow.
Yes. This was her dress. And what happened with her is that when she was 18 months old, the parents had to leave. They had to realize they had to run. And they went and they put her on the doorstep of a Christian family that they knew who owned a patisserie. And their name was Van Dyke, the family. They left the child in the swaddlings on the doorstep and said, please take care of our daughter. We will come back for her, okay?
Wow.
Thank God they did survive the war. But the child was raised with the Van Dykes, really not knowing who her parents were. So when I ask students and people, I ask, what does a child 18 months old understand besides the smell of the mother, the caring voice of the mother? What does a child, and then she grows up with these people.
How was she raised? As a Jew?
She was raised she was baptized and raised as a Christian, as a Catholic child with the Van Dykes, but they were very loving and caring to her. The problem was when the parents eventually came back to get her, they didn't want to let her go.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So what happened?
They took a custody battle, and finally they won the child back. But you have to remember, this child, in her formative years, which is...
And how old was the child when
she was 18 months when she was put on the doorstep.
Yeah.
But she was with them 3 or 4 years. So by the time...
Wow.
She's 4 years old here in this dress that she wore.
Wow.
And the Van Dykes had this dress made, they had this portrait made for her.
Wow, and what's this picture here?
So this is a picture of the Van Dyke family with the child in the dress.
Wow, and where are they?
Okay, this is in their patisserie here.
Oh, this is the patisserie.
Yep.
I don't want to get in the way of the camera, but I want to look up close.
So
wow.
What you have here is an occurrence. This happened quite often. Sometimes you had children who survived with their families. Sometimes we're going to see children didn't necessarily survive at all. Sometimes children were put into hiding, as this child was, but they didn't want to give them back.
Right.
Okay,
just hold
we'll see in some other cases.
Hold on one sec.
Yeah.
I just think I fiddle with this a tiny bit. No, that's all right.
We'll see in another case, for example, where the child, they were put in like orphanages things and they were baptized. We know the stories of what happened there, that the monasteries didn't want to give them back. They thought they were doing the duty of saving the Jewish children by having them become Catholicized. But in this case, she was converted. They did raise her, but when the parents came, she didn't recognize her parents.
Wow.
So this was another dilemma. It's not only a dilemma of the parents having to give over their child and hoping that the child survives. You have also the dilemma that the child then bonds with the family they're with and became the religion of that family. And now how does that child realize their Jewish identity again? This is another question. So these are all questions that have to be thought about when you think about what happened to these children when they went into hiding and what happened to the children.
Yeah. Did you ever have any cases of Christian families loyally raising the children with the knowledge that they're Jewish and telling them they're Jewish?
Oh, yes, you did have that also. That did happen. Yeah, we don't unfortunately in this exhibit have, but there is many occurrences where they did tell them they were just. I can tell you a story about a woman named Irina Sendler, very famous story. She saved more children than Schindler. She would go to these Jewish homes and take the children, and she was a social worker in the Warsaw Ghetto. And she was a nurse, and she used to go in under the auspices of the government, saying that she was going to go and give shots or vaccinations to save the typhus and everything that was rampant there. At the same time, she was smuggling out children. Wow. And she was placing them with non-Christian families, or Christian families, or she was placing them in Christian orphanages. But she took the name of the child, the Hebrew name of the child, and the parent's name. And she wrote them down on a piece of paper, and she hid them in a jar under an apple tree. She had about 3,000 children's names. Her name was Irina Sendler. And she eventually was caught by the Gestapo, and she was tortured, and she was ready to be executed, and the partisans were able to help her escape. They had something to do with one of the Nazis who was there at the time.
Wow.
She escaped. So later she went back and told where all these, and she had all those children replaced with the parents if they could find them, or with Jewish families.
It sounds like it could be a Hollywood movie.
It was a Hollywood movie. It's
called
The Courageous Heart of Irina Sendler.
What's it called? The
Courageous Heart of Irina Sendler.
I've got to watch this.
Yeah.
When was it produced?
A while ago, but I can give it to you. But she was then in righteous amongst the nation in Yad Vashem, but she was only found out about when she was about 89 or 90 years of age. The family found her in some, they were in Tennessee or some remote place in America. They found her and they brought her to Israel, and she passed away, and she has been, they took care of her at the end of her life. One of these children that she saved.
Wow, wow, wow.
Okay, so here we have children on the move. Children on the move. There's a lot that happened here. We have to understand that one of the main things that happened with children, especially here in this country, was the Kindertransport, which we'll talk about over there in a little bit. But as soon as the war broke out and Kristallnacht happened, and what we have here is a very interesting artifact. You can see here it says, German goes berserk in orgy of Jew baiting. But look what the headlines are.
What does that mean?
San Francisco
what does that
Chronicle.
mean?
Well, that they're taking Jews and that they're baiting them. That baiting is like when you're fishing, you put bait on a hook. They're trying to get Jews to come in. They were trying to gather up the Jews to put them into the camps. Well, this was Kristallnacht.
Right.
We know when Kristallnacht happened. In Kristallnacht, we know that approximately 30,000 people within the 2 days were sent to Dachau. Men were, just for being a Jew, you were just rallied up and sent to the to Dachau concentration camp. In the meantime, when the families were seeing what was happening, the parents got these kids onto Kindertransports. So here we have Moshe Shulevitz, who we saw his talus over there, with his siblings. His parents put them on the Kindertransport. He was only the age of, I believe, 15 at the time, and he was told to watch over his siblings. Now, all again, we're talking about what happens when a child has to become an adult. So we have a lot of role reversal that takes place here in the story of the Shoah, the story of the Holocaust.
And what is this?
Okay, so this is a wimple belt. This is something that was given to him along with his talus bag that we saw over there. This was something that Ashkenazi Jews have when a child has a bris milah. They put this around him, and this he keeps throughout his life, and he takes it. Apparently they use it for different things, but he took this, I think even when you get married, they wrap it around you, some of the Lataim, but the Ashkenazi Jews, but he kept this is one of the things he took with him, his talus bag and the wimple belt he took with him. So again, if we go back to think about the suitcase, what do you take? What shows your identity? What allows you to still be who you are? Right? If it's the wimple belt, it's the talus bag. How do you keep your identity when you go through things like being put in with a family, or as these children were put on the Kindertransport, not knowing where they were going to go and what would happen. And we also have to realize that not only did they not know where they were going, but when they got there, they didn't speak the language. They didn't know what the people looked, they didn't dress the same way, they didn't eat the same foods. And these are kids. We're talking about kids as young as 6, 7, 8 years of age. All right? So again, here in America, the San Francisco Chronicle, this is the day after Kristallnacht, and this is the headline. We're talking about the Jews is just like, a secondary, by the way. what's going on in Europe.
Wow.
After 30,000 people have been exported to Dachau, 1,000 synagogues have been burnt, 900 people have been murdered, and that was the
Is this an actual copy?
thing, yeah.
Wow, wow, wow.
Here we have, I don't know if you want to spend time on this, but this is a video, real quick, we can just put it on for a couple seconds, a video of...
Since German policy in 1938 was to force Jewish immigration, the Nazis willingly let the children leave, as long as they did not take any valuables with them. Each child was allowed one suitcase, one piece of hand luggage, and 10 Reichsmark. We had 4 days to...
Here we have a story of a child who she's talking about that she had only a couple days to pack. Again, you saw it, you weren't allowed to take much. That size of a suitcase your whole life. You don't know where you're going. You're told England. How do you know what England? At age 8, 9, 10, what do you know what England is?
Yeah.
Especially in those days when there was no internet, there was no TVs really. She's talking about how her father takes her to the train and saying goodbye to her, and she gets on the train, and the father says, please, just give me your hand one more time so I could kiss you goodbye, and he yanks her out of the train, of the Kindertransport.
Intentionally?
Well, he couldn't let her go.
Right.
So this is a dilemma not only of the children, it's a dilemma of the parents also. How do the parents, what do they do? How do they say goodbye to their child if they never know? It's not, we have to also remember one thing. It's natural for a parent to die before a child, but it's not the opposite way. It's a hard pill to swallow, but that's reality. That we have to understand. And they didn't know if their kids were going to survive. They put them on a train. They didn't know what was going to happen to them. They had to try their best to save those kids. Hitler said they're our arch enemy. They're the worst of the worst of the worst. We have to get rid of them all. And they had to try to save them to be the testimony of what was later to come. Okay, here we're going to come now into the ghetto. So we've had now the children moving, getting on the move, being sent away from home. And now we come to the crunch time where ghettoization starts in 1939, 1940. Here we have a couple things. So if we look here at the table, we have here the different stars that the children and different people had to wear. Each star is from a different language. So we have here Italian, we have here Polish, we have here French, Dutch, okay? These were different stars that everybody, even the child as young as the age of 2, we've seen pictures of children with the age of 2 having to wear stars, identifying that they're Jewish. Here we have an armband from the Warsaw Ghetto, which was...
That's an actual armband?
I'm sorry, the Lodz Ghetto, yes, the Lodz Ghetto. It's an actual armband.
Wow. Can I hold it?
You can.
Oh my gosh, wow.
I mean, you can. I'm not going to let other people, but yeah. This was the Jewish police. Now, the Jewish police were also this specific...
Is this what we call capos?
These were the capos were in the camps. This was in the ghetto. But they were part and parcel helping the Nazis being able to round up people for transport.
Yeah, and that, by the way, is another case of a very, very difficult dilemma. What do you do? You're told you've got to police the Jews as a Jew. What do? Do you say I won't do this and get killed, or do it and survive?
A lot of these people had families themselves, and when their child's name came onto the list, the question was, can I change my child for somebody else? That was the very famous question brought to Rav Osher.
Yeah.
And Rav Osher says, why is your son's blood any different than his son's blood?
Yeah.
So this is what happened. So here we have the ghettoization taking place. We know that in Warsaw alone there was 450,000 Jews in 1.3 square miles. So if you imagine between Edgware to Mill Hill, that's approximately 1.3 square miles, 450,000 people in that small area contained. Okay, wow. That's what the Nazis...
You need to give another comparison for our American viewers.
American viewers. Okay, let's say that would be 3 city blocks. I would say if you were talking about Manhattan, probably from Battery Sea Park and maybe up to what? To the park, where the Liberty Park, that's right there where the...
And how many Jews are we talking?
450,000. 450,000
wow.
people in 1.3 square miles. Okay, so here we have the Horowitz family. And the Horowitz family, the daughter, who is listed...
This is them here. This is presumably taken before the war?
This is before the war. Here's the mother and the father. Unfortunately, nobody survived except one of the daughters. And Edith here made a challah cover, okay? She took this challah cover with her. And as she left home, she was put on a march. And we say it here, in a quarter of an hour, we're leaving. We send my kisses and regards. I kiss you separately. I kiss father's hand and my mother's hand. She didn't know where she was going, Edith. Edith didn't survive, unfortunately.
And where did she put this challah cover?
She made this by hand, and her sister then, who survived, took it and wanted to be buried with it. Okay, this was her sister's handmade that she
Wow.
made the holocover stuff, and we have some blood stains on it.
But presumably, was she allowed to be buried with it?
No. So then she donated it to the museum.
Right.
So
Well,
this
because
is the holocover picture, the holocover
Right.
that she then did not get buried with, but she wanted to be buried because the only thing she had left of her family, of her sister who
Right.
made this. Her sister was killed in Bergen-Belsen.
Right.
Okay. In the ghettos is when the children actually became, it changed from role reversal started taking place. This is when the children became the parents and the parents became the children.
In what sense?
In the sense that children would have to go out and look for food. As we see here, this little girl here is selling firewood, okay, in order
Right.
to help her family survive the cold of the war. We can see the armband here, so we know this is a Lodz ghetto. And
Sorry, that armband looks a lot like the police.
yeah, so you notice this because this is the Lodz ghetto. As I said, I made a mistake, not Warsaw. I said it was Lodz ghetto.
Right.
But that's the police, and this is just what everybody had to wear.
That's a standard Jewish armband.
That was the story. Where in other ghettos, they had to wear stars, but in the Lodz ghetto, they actually wore armbands. And
Right.
this is a child. What we can see here is that she's having to take the job, a 14, 15-year-old girl, having to take the job of bringing home the family's staple to eat.
Is this a painting or a
This
photo?
this is a photo of the painting, the original painting we have in the museum in America.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And
Wow.
here's what we have here is some cards, tea ration cards.
Yes.
From the Warsaw Ghetto. They were for Pesach. Now, again, food was very limited in the ghetto. The ins and outs of food that was allowed to be given was rationed. And even things like tea, you had to have a ration card, which was very limited to how much tea you were allowed to drink during your time
And
period.
who was handing out these ration
This
cards?
was handed out by, well, the Jewish policemen, and it was handed out through, obviously.
And this is just a ration card for tea.
That is correct. This is the ration card for tea.
So how much would that give you? One of these?
Probably one for the family. I can give you an example. A child, like what her hard work is doing here, she might bring home a loaf of bread, and that loaf of bread would be the size of like a wheel of a moped, the wheel of a, what do you call these bikes here? And that would be supposed to be sufficient for the whole week for the family. And
The whole week.
And the bread that they were making was made out of half flour and half sawdust.
Oh.
Okay, so the nutritional value was limited. We know that
Wow.
the staple diet that the Jews were getting at the beginning was about 1,100 calories a day, and it went down to 680 calories per day.
Wow.
So,
And I know a lot of that means because I'm counting my calories
Yeah.
at the moment.
so children's, their job was they could get through, they could sneak out of the ghetto, they could go and they could get themselves through the walls of the ghettos, through the fences, and they would bring back they would bring back the food. The parents were laying in the bed depressed a lot of the time because
Yeah.
they couldn't go out to work, they couldn't do anything, or the mother was home, the father had been gone, the older siblings had been gone, they'd been taken to labor camps.
What percentage of people were dying of starvation?
So in the beginning, in the Warsaw Ghetto, it was over 100,000 the first year, and then it decreased because Jews learned how to actually deal with the problem.
Be resourceful,
Be
yeah.
resourceful. It also had to do a lot with sanitation issues.
Wow.
Everything came, but at the beginning of the ghetto, the first 100,000, first year 100,000 died, and they were buried in the ghetto.
That's a
which is probably
staggering number.
Staggering amount. But that was the job of the kid. So the kid, as we see from earlier, we saw how the kid has to think about what it is to be leaving possibly their parents. Here now they're becoming actually the parent. Okay? And then we move on to the next part, which is probably the most difficult part, was the story of the kids in the camps. Now, it wasn't common that kids got to camps. It wasn't common. Here we have a pair of tzitzit of a Bobover Hasidic boy.
So you have to explain what that means to our
Okay,
viewers.
I'm sorry. This is a four-cornered garment that men wear under their clothing from the age. Once their child is 3 years of age, they start putting these on, and they have these special tassels. And these tassels represent all the different mitzvahs, and the knots represent the different
The
mitzvahs
different
that the
biblical
Jews have.
commandments, yeah.
The biblical commands the Jews have. And this child was a Hasidic from Bobover, from Poland. He was taken into Auschwitz. The reason he was taken into Auschwitz is he was already at the age of 15, where if you made it you were survived that long, then you were considered an adult because you could work. Okay. Anyway, before that, a child was not worthy, so they would right away be sent to the gas chambers when they got to the camps. But here, this child gets to the camp, and he sees another man bringing in this garment, and he goes and asks him, "Please, can I use it so I can make my prayer on it?" The Nazi guard sees him putting out making prayer. He beats him. If we look very carefully, these are blood-stained. That's why they're not white anymore. These are all blood-stained. He was beaten so hard, so terribly. I mean, he was literally on the ground being beaten, and the Nazi then, after he beats him, takes these and he throws them against the fence, which we know was an electrified fence, and he leaves him. The boy goes, this boy Mendel goes and takes the tzitzit off of the fence and goes to try to hand them back to the man he borrowed them from. The man refused to have them. He kept these tzitzit with him. He makes it all the way to America, and he ends up raising a family and continuing his life, which is another side of the story.
So the electric fence didn't kill him?
It didn't kill him. Whether they touched or not, we don't know. All he says is that's his story, that's where these tzitzit, this is what happened with these tzitzit.
Wow.
But the determination of wanting to keep his faith, wanting to keep his belief, not allowing himself, where the man who gave him these didn't want them
What would
back.
you say to someone that said that was almost irresponsible of him?
Well, because I think when you're in a case like that, you realize that God is watching over you. If God wants you to survive at that moment, you'll survive, and if not, then it was also meant to be. But what he is doing, he was doing the appropriate and the necessary thing in order to keep going and do what he believed in. He's not
In other words, these things helped him to survive. It gave him
absolutely
inspiration.
There's another story in the camps in Plaszow, the famous camp of Schindler's List. We have there the story of a rabbi who talks about, he was also just a young boy, 15, 16-year-old, and it was Sukkot time, which is the holiday of the tabernacles. And he wants to make a tabernacle so that he can pray in, because we have to do this for 7 days. And he realizes that his job was in the labor bit, that they had to move these major size, huge planks of big pieces of, pieces of wood.
Yeah.
And what he did is he had them all piled up. He made one big pile here, another big pile here, another big pile there, and then he told the boys who was working, to go get tree branches and stick it on top. And when the Nazis saw what he was doing, what are you doing? What are you doing? He said, no, we're having to camouflage this area from when the Allies fly over, they shouldn't see. He made himself a sukkah. He was able to continue doing what he had to do as a Jewish man to keep the laws of what we follow of the 7 days of the tabernacle holiday.
I think that's what they call chutzpah.
Absolutely, that's 100% chutzpah. So here we go. Here is another form of hiding. What's very interesting here is that we have now some pictures of a child, not necessarily he looks like a good Polish boy, and his mother. Actually, this is a family of Roglinter that are in hiding. The mother and the child, Feivel and the mother. She goes as the name.
This is a picture of him
Helena.
in hiding?
This is him in hiding, and her name here is actually Chaya, and she calls herself Helena, okay? Helena. Here's some boys also, Flesenberg, who was in a chateau. This is another type of hiding. She was with a family. He was in a chateau and an orphanage. We're going to talk about orphanages in a minute. And here, believe it or not, is a very famous story of Hasmonean High School. This is Rabbi Schoenfeld's minutes. And it talks us here in the minutes how he had to vacate Hasmonean High School and take the kids to Shefford because of the blitzkrieg that was happening. So he had brought children from the kinder transport we spoke about over there. He brings them to Hasmonean, and now he has to move them out to Shefford because of the blitzkrieg that's taking place in London.
And you know something remarkable? That's his actual minutes.
This is his minutes.
So this guy, this is the founder of Hasmonean High School, Rabbi Dr. Schoenfeld. He helped my grandfather to come over here after the war.
And that's all the kinder transport, yeah.
That is a remarkable thing to see. This is his actual book of minutes.
This is his actual book of minutes.
From a meeting with who?
That's it. Well, here he's talking about he's had to bring the children out, and then the next page talks about how in 1946 all the kids are coming back after the war.
Wow.
Okay, here we're just moving quickly past. We're coming here now to another form of hiding, which was the orphanages in Belgium. So in Belgium, it was very interesting, but the German government, the Gestapo, allowed that orphanages be set up for the children, so they knew where all the children were all the time. The Belgian government did not want the children to be taken, so they said, okay, we'll put them in orphanages. There was a very famous man named Tiefenbrunner. Here he is right here. This is Mr. Tiefenbrunner, and he had 3 children of his own, but he decides to open up an orphanage. He saved approximately 1,000 children. I happened to find out through somebody I met when I went to discover what happened to my grandmother, somebody who was in this orphanage, and she pulls out the picture, and I find my father in the picture, and I say my auntie in the picture. My father and auntie were one of Tiefenbrunner's children. Here we have a menu. Here's a menu when my father and his sister came over on the boat to America after the war, and here is a report card that Tiefenbrunner signed as my auntie's father.
Sorry, so hold on one second. So this menu here, I want to see this menu.
This is a menu of the ship when they came over from Belgium to the States.
So what year is this?
This would have been 1946,
I wonder
47.
what they're serving people back then. Eggs with horseradish, herring with onion, sausage, pickles. Sounds very Ashkenazi.
It wasn't necessarily a Jewish thing. Here we have one of the major, besides Tiefenbrunner, we had another, Agudat Yisrael made a very big effort of saving the children after the war. Very, very famous woman named Recha Sternbach. This is her passport. And we see that she has had influence with all different types of, whether it was with Paraguay and different types of embassies, to get people visas to get out. Well, she saved lots and lots, approximately 3,000 children she saved herself. And she got, very interestingly enough, they just found out recently that was because of her, when her husband talking to Massé, I believe his name was Massé, convinced Himmler to blow up the gas chamber in Auschwitz, not in Birkenau, in Auschwitz. There was a gas chamber. It was blown up because of her convincing that if they blow it up, then they can hide the evidence. The Allies will not see what he was doing. And she saved.
She was trying to stop.
She saved a lot of Hungary
basically.
Jews. Yeah. So here we have
Wow,
her
so
actual.
she was the one. It was a
convinced him to
Jewish
do it.
person that
Who
convinced
convinced
them.
him, yes.
Because often when you hear oh, they're cowards, the Nazis, they burned the evidence.
No.
But actually, this was done intentionally
done
to
intentionally.
stop more gassings of Jews.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And here we have one thing is she saved about approximately 3,000 children and put them in hiding, which we'll talk about here in a minute. She put them with, she saved them and put them with other families. These are actually her candlesticks. And what she did with these candles, this representation.
Shabbat candlesticks, I assume.
These were her Shabbat candlesticks or Sabbath candlesticks, and these represent that she would light these for behalf of all the children who lost their mothers, who did not have mothers anymore to light the candlesticks at home. And these represent the light that she brought back to these children into the world by lighting the candlesticks for their mothers. Those are her actual candlesticks. Okay, here we have another.
Did she held on to them during the war?
Those were hers, yeah. She brought them through the war. She lit them for the children. She would make the Sabbath candle lighting for the children that survived, which we'll talk about over here. Here we have another way of saving the children. We have here a poster. It's called the Save the Child Foundation, as you can see here. And these were trying to stop the...
what language is this?
This is Yiddish. And it's asking to please save a child to protect the children who were put in these monasteries and orphanages, the Christian orphanages, to be brought to find them. You know, the very famous story of like, you know, Tiefenbrunner did and other Rabbanim who went to these orphanages, these monasteries, and said, let us come and get the children. We don't have any Jewish children, they said. Yeah. Give us just before nighttime to come and speak to them. Just 30 seconds, that's all we need. And they would go in and they'd say the very famous words, Shema Yisrael, Hear O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And all of a sudden all the children were screaming, Mommy, Daddy, Papa, Tata, Mama, because they remember their parents saying that to them before they would go to sleep every night. And he said, that's a Jewish child, and that's a Jewish child, and that's a Jewish child, and that's how they were able to bring them over.
Wow.
And they
so
were able to save them from
poster
Poland. This is a poster that
from
actually...
Poland?
That's correct.
And Save a Child, the Save a Child Foundation.
This was in New York.
Was that a Jewish foundation?
This was a Jewish foundation.
So I've heard, do they just still focus on, they still exist today, do they not?
Maybe, they could be,
sure,
but they were trying to get the children out of the Christian...
So this is a poster saying, if you know people housing young orphans...
Yes, please give them to us.
Please give them.
But it was very difficult, they weren't able, and they did get thrown out eventually.
And do you know what the top bit says in Yiddish, what it means?
It says, who saves a single soul is considered as having saved the whole world. This is an expression that we say, if you save one person, it's like saving an entire world. Yeah. And the last station we have here was very impressive, which leads into what we just said there, was saving the children. This man here named Mike Tress, he worked for Agudat Yisrael, which is a foundation that helped with the Sternbachs to bring the children to America and house all these children. These are all his files. These are files of the children. If we look at any single file, we'll tell you, so-and-so and the mother perished, or they don't know the identity, what happened to the parents. Each one says something, born in, I can't say, born somewhere. But these are his actual files. Father dead, mother missing, okay? But these were these children that
these are the actual files.
These are the actual files, and these are the children he placed with families. He found them.
Can I look at one, please?
Yes, please. He got them their identities back. He found out who they were. And here's a young child.
So where does it say where? Explain to me what's said on the sheet.
Okay, it says here. So here's her name, Chaya something. Chaya Lugav, it looks like, born in Budapest, father dead, mother living, education 3 years. She has elementary school, got to Israel. She was from Budapest, Hungary. She was housed with this family named the Einsteins, and the amount of donation paid to get her was $75.
And the reason why he collected all these files was because...
he now placed these children with Jewish families.
Right.
Most of these children were orphans, even if she had a mother, but the mother might not have made it to America.
Right.
Okay? And here we have a child who, unfortunately, the story ended in Auschwitz. Okay, so as we say here, her name was Erika Lowy. She was hiding in Hungary. She was deported with her grandparents and her mother, discovered, and she was murdered in Auschwitz at the age of 7 years of age. The mother survived. The daughter did not. This is her before she passed. And the mother brought these candlesticks out of Hungary with her, and they survived, and they made it all the way here.
Was the mother put in a camp?
The mother was camped, but the daughter, as I said, the children were the arch enemies.
Fine, but
the mother survived.
The mother brought that with her into the camp?
The mother she went back to get these in Hungary.
She went back to get them. Okay, so her house wasn't taken over?
Might have been. She might have left them with somebody.
Okay.
But these were her candles. She then continued. That's her legacy. But unfortunately, as we see all the children who survived, there was also the unfortunate one, the 1.1 million who perished. And that's the story of the hidden children in the Holocaust.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that.
Pleasure. Thank you for coming.
And if anyone wants to check this out, if you're in London, it's available to view until when?
It has been in high school until Thursday, and then again in the JLE from Sunday to following Thursday.
Okay, we'll put the details up on the video at the end.
Lovely.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
your
so
time.
much.
That
Thank
was
you,
really
thank
excellent, and I hope you learned something new. I certainly did. Thank you.
To stay up to date with the latest JTV content, if you're on YouTube, click subscribe below the video and the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, click the like button, and under following, click see first.